If you don't know what that is, we work to make people as independent as possible in the things they need to do, want to do, and are expected to do. So these can be as simple as going to the bathroom, making food, getting dressed, to what they enjoy. So gardening, or if they're expected to be a parent in what the department teamed up with Kingdom Workers. And Kingdom Workers is a nationwide group that supports people where they are. So there are 3 core tenets of Kingdom Workers, and these include Christian welfare, gospel proclamation, and then one more. Here, I have it on my phone. I did not memorize these. So yeah, Christian proclamation, Christian welfare, gospel proclamation, and then meaningful local relationships. So when I was in Malawi, I could see these tenets all at work. So we went and we worked with the physical disability ministry there. So in Malawi, the people are taught that when they have a child with a disability, that they either sinned or someone in their family did something bad, and the dad, the mom, be the sole caretaker. There's no questions asked. And Kingdom Workers realizes that this is a really big need because there's no aides that can come in to help support the mom. So their ministry is they train volunteers living in Malawi to provide rehab services similar to what OTs, PTs would do. And then every once in a while they have specialized groups come in. So OTs, speech therapists, they're hoping to get some PTs, go in when they have their training and provide additional resources that the long-term volunteers can then use when they're working with a child in their home. They don't want to just create missions where groups come in for like several weeks at a time and then leave, and then their ministry is not sustained. So that's a really cool aspect of Kingdom Workers. To volunteer for Kingdom Workers, you don't have to go out of the country to do so. They have ministries within the country, so after natural disasters. They also have a really big foster care program in the U.S. So does anyone have any questions about Kingdom Workers? There's a website. They have lots of good resources. But so this is my overview of the trip. So I was gone from January 14th through the 18th. So we flew from O'Hare to Addis Ababa, which is in Ethiopia, and we almost did not catch our layover. But then we went from Ethiopia and we stopped up, and then we went to Malawi. So that was roughly around 24 hours in total. And then on our way back, we went from Blantyre, Malawi, which is where we are located, up to Ethiopia, and then we stopped in Dublin, and then landed in O'Hare, and that was again another 24 hours of travel. So it was tiring. I didn't know where Malawi was until I left like 2 weeks before my trip, which is not good. So Malawi is pretty small of a country. Zambia is on the western border of it, and that's probably like at least double the size of Malawi. But Malawi has the same population as Zambia. It's kind of interesting. But it's really tiny. It's a very skinny country, and it's near the southern portion of Africa. So it's pretty south. The country, if you can see, where's the point? Is this the, Dad, is there a pointer on this?
There is a pointer.
Is this the, Dad, is there a pointer on this?
There is a pointer on there. I think it's the top button.
I don't know. Oh, anyway, so if you can look in the Malawi picture, there's that blue spot that runs the most length of the country. That's Lake Malawi, and that takes up 2/3 of the country. It's a really big part of it. Sounds good. We went to visit Lake Malawi when we were there. So while we were in Malawi, we were always supported. People asked me, did you feel unsafe when you were there? I only felt unsafe when we decided to go for a walk, when we didn't have staff with us, and people started following us and asking where we lived. That was the only time I felt unsafe. Every time, though, we had a staff with us. So the family on the left, that's the Terrells. So it's Dan and Leanna and their 3 triplets. They're the Americans that live. Yeah, they're so cute. We went to a bar with them, and they were hanging out with us. so cute. We went to a bar with them and they were hanging out with us. But so they're the Americans who live there, and they're the department heads of Kingdom Workers Malawi. So they oversee and they hire people, and they were the ones we were corresponding with before we went over. Yes, the kids were born. They've lived their entire lives in Malawi. They love it. And then the middle picture, that's the whole staffing of Malawi, of Kingdom Workers Malawi. So it's Dan, then Tendai. They're like program ministers. Started there. He has 8 siblings, and one of them is blind, and another one has Down syndrome. And he saw the impact that disabilities had on people and didn't see any of the resources available. So he's the one that kind of prompted its creation. And then there's Elena. She started a couple years ago, and then Leanna again, and then Tawina. So they're the ones that help spearhead it. And then the lady on the right is Martha. She's one of the security guards at the guest house. They have security guards 24/7, and for most of the houses in Malawi that have gates, just because they don't want people breaking and entering. So I'm just going to give you, I like this. I like going, if I went on a trip, I like to know what you did on each day. So this is what I'm going to do. So we landed on January 5th around like 3 in the tiny, and to get all of our bags. When we got back, then we went to our guest house. So that's the guest house that we stayed in. People are like, "Oh, did you stay in dirt huts?" Nope, we had electricity, we had plumbing, we had Wi-Fi when we were there, so we were very spoiled. Then after we got unpacked, got to take a shower for a little bit, we went to Chicken Heaven. I had fried chicken. I was not expecting that. It was very good. Yep. So the second day we were there. Yep. So the second day we were there, we started doing more of the culture-like things. So we learned some Chichewa. So that's the native language of Malawi. So there are a lot of tribes within Malawi, but Chichewa is like the overarching language. So some key a lot of things we heard would be like Mulibanji, and that's how are you, and then you just respond Dili Bueno, Kaya Nu, I am fine, how are you? Then the person responds Dili Bueno, I am fine, and then you always end with Zikomo, thank you. Even if you don't understand them, it's always polite to say Zikomo. So if you don't, another really cool one we said a lot was Mulungu Akudali Seni, which means God's blessings. So we'd say that after we'd be leaving. They always laughed at us because they thought we were silly that we Americans are trying to speak their language, but it's okay. Then we started the day, and this church is in Blantyre, which is the second largest city in Malawi. It's a beautiful Savior. It was really nice. The pastor he did some Chichewa, then he also did some English. So this is our group outside of the church. So there's Rebecca. All of these people are in my class except myself, Jamie, Nicole, Heather. She's a TMOT, so she's an OTA and OT, occupational therapy assistant, and now she's transitioning to become an occupational therapist, and that's our professor, Dr. Goldbach. So this is a more traditional food meal that you would eat in Malawi. So so this stuff right here is called Sima. It's spelled Nsima. It's basically just flour and water put together, and there's really no taste to it. And what they do is usually, we learn the technique of eating it. You roll it. We learn the technique of eating it. You roll it up in your hands, and then you make a little divot, and then you scoop in either beans or chicken or whatever they have. So we went to a restaurant called Flavors, which is a pretty hot spot to go to. So we had chicken curry, Sima, some hot spot to go to. So we had chicken curry, Sima, some greens, beans, and then these veggie stuff. We went there twice. And then what was really nice is that they allowed us not just to eat out so we could save some of our money. So we went to a grocery store, it's called ShopRite. it's not, it looked like a typical, a lot more produce, and there were flies. But it was very big. We got food for the entire week. And then after we got back from shopping and eating, we took a walk. And this is the hill, it's Sochi Hill. They said it's not a mountain. And while we were getting back from our walk, people were like, "Why are you walking? Americans don't walk. You have cars." And we're like, "We do walk. We're trying to get exercise." But like, "Why are you walking? You have cars." So it was just funny because I'm like, we're trying to get exercise. And that's one really cool thing in Malawi. Everyone is walking. When we would be driving, people would be in the roads. So it's something that is just typical. They walk in the rain when it's hot, cold. Then on January 17th, this was, I think this was the first day we went out and actually worked with people. But we had, before you go into and so basically it's just a piece of cloth. You can get 2 yards or 4 yards, and you can tie it however you want. It just has to stay on you. And moms, in addition, that's how they wrap up their babies, on their back. They put it on the floor to eat. So they serve a lot of purposes. Also in the market, we saw all the fresh food they had. I didn't have it, but the mangoes were really in season. They were huge. The avocados were really big. So it was nice. It was cool to see all the fresh fruit. And then, so what I said, all the fresh fruit. And then, so what I said, I said I was going to practice this, and I did not, so I apologize. But when we worked with the disability ministry, we went to 2 churches. So we went to a church in Pemba, and then a church in Salima. The next 3 days will be pictures from Pemba. So this is a rural church. It's about 30 minutes outside of Blantyre, the nearest city. Most of these people, they don't get into the city. They don't have cars. They live on this really long convenience village, I would say, in the middle. The parents, we really only saw moms who came with their children because the fathers would leave them. And the moms would have to walk and bring their child to therapy. So this is one of the little boys we helped with on the first day. This is one of the little boys we helped with on the first day. The first day we had over 12 children come, which was a lot, and we were kind of overwhelmed. But his name is Grant, and when I was working with another little girl with CP, he was behind me and poking my back, and the people, they were like, "He wants to know your name, he wants to talk to you." So I said, "Hi." People, they were like, "He wants to know your name, he wants to talk to you." So I said, "Hi, my name," I said, "Ine Dine Karenna," which means my name is Karenna. And I'm like, "What's your name?" And he just looked at me. He's like, "Grant." I'm like, "Hi, Grant." And then we ate together. So as you can see, he really enjoyed his meal. And this is what they fed us at church. So it's considered improper that if they host a social event, they need to have food. And it's expected that you eat the food and you keep eating until you absolutely cannot eat anymore. And they're going to keep telling you need to keep eating. So because we were visiting, they made sure. There's another thing. There's lots of free-range animals in Malawi. Like at this church, there's this one dog that just is in the periphery the entire time. And he's not owned by anyone, but he gets all of the food, and he sleeps in the church. And there's chickens walking all over and goats. So I don't know where they got this chicken, but grocery store, I think. I'm not sick though, so I'm healthier then. And then they also had rice and some cabbage. So this is pretty typical food if they can afford meat. Oh my goodness. Okay. So if you don't know, I really love babies. And I said before I went on this trip that as soon as I saw any babies, my professor's like, "Go talk to them." So this is Triss. So her mom is getting trained to become a volunteer. And so the mom was sitting observing a session. And so I went over there because there was nothing to do. And I asked if I could hold her. And and then the mom the next day, she's like, "You Triss friends?" I said, "Yes, I hope we're friends." And then, it's yes. So I was very happy with the amount of babies. If Zach will tell you, I've talked about these babies, and you'll see more babies in the presentation, but Oh, I love them. She's only 4 months. But, oh, I love them. She's only 4 months. Then, so after we got back from Pemba and serving there, it was a pretty exhausting day. But across the road from Chicken Heaven, there's a place called Milky Heaven. And we all, yes, it was really good. So we all got like shakes or ice cream. Tawina, one of the Kingdom Workers people, she walked with us, and then her husband picked her up. But it was a really good treat to the end of the day. Then on January 4th, or January 8th, our fourth day there, before we went to Pemba, Dan Terrell took us to a place called Tiamikes. And Tiamikes in Chichewa means be thankful. So this is a organization that is meant for impoverished women or vulnerable women, so young women, prostitutes, widows. So what they do is these women learn how to sew. And so they do all this training. These women learn how to sew. And so they do all this training. And then once they graduate, they receive a sewing machine that they then can use to make products and sell them so then they can receive money. Everything that they make goes into the store, and then all the profits go back to the women. So, and then all the profits go back to the women. So, and the reason we go there and the Terrells really like it is that their friends own this store. So it's a sewing ministry, as I said. And so I have a couple things from there. So like I got my mom this L. Let's see. Oh, different. They have pictures of the women that have graduated. And then this is our second day in Pemba. So in addition to providing therapy, I should rewind. So along with the long-term volunteers who are getting trained, they also have a physiotherapist who is there for the training. So a physiotherapist has in speech. So they have the whole background, and they don't go to school as long. But while people are working with the children, we're also doing intake so that they could have better documentation of the children, because some of the parents go in and they don't even know what disability their child has. They aren't taught the skills to ask those questions when they're visiting with the doctor, because there's that assumption that this doctor is so smart. I didn't even finish third grade. I'm not going to be able to ask questions. But there's this young lady named Patricia, and that's her grandma. Yeah, so she's 15, and the grandma, when we were talking to her, she said she couldn't do anything for herself. She didn't feed herself. She didn't help toilet herself. And then we were just sitting there waiting for someone to get freed up so they could go do therapy. And I asked Arlena if she could translate and ask if I could try doing hand-over-hand feeding with her. So if you don't know what hand-over-hand is, you take their hand, you still give them the motion of them feeding, and hopefully it'll give their muscle the idea of this is what you need to do. The grandma said, yeah, sure, I don't think the idea of this is what you need to do. The grandma said, yeah, sure, I don't think it's going to work. And so we started doing it, and Patricia would turn her head, but eventually we got her to bring the fork to her mouth, and her grandma was like, what? And so then next we tried with the cup, and then they kept doing that, and eventually Patricia was able to bring it up by herself. So it's pretty cool. Then our last day at Pemba, I didn't have any particular cool client stories that day, but that's okay. So that's the inside of the church. So it was paper, what is those? It's just little decorations they had on the cover. So you can see it's just it's like cement flooring. They only have natural light. There's no electricity in there. So if it would have been raining, it would have been kind of dark. They just have pews they can move around. It's pretty simple. And then that's a dirt road that we were trying. Once you got into the country, the roads were very bumpy. And we asked how long that road went, and they said for miles and miles. So those who are way back there, it's going to take them a lot longer to get care. Then this is our group with, why can't I think of his name? Shoot, not Clement. Vincent, he's a physio. He graduated just a little while ago, and he was fabulous. He joked around with us. One day, he's like, do you know what we're having for lunch? And we're like, no. He said, you're going to have hoo-hoo. And we're like, hoo-hoo, okay. So then we're like, Elena, we know what we're going to have for lunch. She's like, what? We said, hoo-hoo. She's like, what, hoo-hoo? I'm like, yeah. She's like, no, you're having, she said, cuckoo. And we're like, you lied to us, Vincent. He's like, no, I did not. Ha, ha, ha. He was funny. He was trying to play with us. And then Elena and Tawina and her husband invited us to go to a social event that evening called Sounds of Malawi. So it's like, it's a more touristy kind of thing called Sounds of Malawi. So it's like, it's a more touristy kind of thing, but they have local artists from Malawi come and play. So we got to hear Bush play, and that was a nice, good way to end our time in Blantyre. That's us. That's my class outside of the. It's called. That's us. That's my class outside of the. It's called the Jacunda Foundation, and all the proceeds from that foundation go to fund an orphanage that the owners operate. Then on January 10th, we went to Queen Elizabeth Central Hospital in Blantyre. So there's like 5 big hospitals within this country of Malawi, and this is one of them. So Kingdom Workers has never taken a group to this hospital, so it was cool that we got to do this. As you can see, I didn't take many pictures, but someone did. It's an open hospital, so connected by these like open structured walkways. People wait outside for hours to receive care. When we were there, yeah, there's just this giant courtyard and people are waiting. We didn't ask, but I'm assuming they're either waiting to receive care or they're there because they have family there. They're waiting to receive care or they're there because they have family there. So they're not called, like different areas within the hospitals are called wards. And I think they said they have around 20. So they have like a burn unit we saw, a peds unit, rehab unit, cardiac, a bunch of them. If you've ever seen like a pediatric therapy room in America, they have swings and lights and mats and all of this stuff. But it was just this one little room in this back corner of the hospital. They have a couple different equipments. And then, so while we were walking through the hospital, our first place that we options to go visit, to observe the OT there, was the chronically ill children's ward. So I volunteered to go there. So I worked with she's an OT tech named Mazubo or something. So she worked with the chronically ill children and also the children. So she worked with the chronically ill children and also the children with nutritional deficits. So in the chronically ill children ward, it was not uncommon to have children that were there for months at a time. So a lot of the children I saw, they had meningitis. There was this one that had a neuro condition, and the children were just. There was this one that had a neuro condition, and the children were just like had no energy to do anything. The nurses, so like there was just this one big room, and then the nurses had this back table. And the nurses sat there while the parents provide the toileting, the feeding, the wash. That top right corner, that's like their medical supplies that they had for that one area. The nurses, they didn't wash their hands. We did wear gloves sometimes. So in the courtyards, as I said, the parents, they're in charge of doing their own laundry. So that's all their chichenjes laying out drying because they wash them in this area where they have these washing areas that they can use. So then in the nutritional unit, we worked with a little boy who was in isolation. He had CP and I don't know if there must have been something else that led him to be in that ward, but a lot of them had SARS or severe acute malnutrition disorder, SADS. It was SADS. And then after we went to the hospital, it was kind of like, for me, that was probably one of the hardest days because I saw, even though we saw a lot of sick kids when we did therapy, it wasn't to the extent that we saw. And the therapist was having me treat, she's like, what would you do? Okay, stay with this child who is at risk for choking and dying. And so it was kind of overwhelming. But then we got to end the day going to like a bar splash pad thing that they have. It's more touristy with Dan Terrell's family. So as you saw, their kids are they were like, let's go play in the rain and all this stuff. And then they also, so even if you don't need it, it's customary to have a housekeeper. So the Terrells have a housekeeper, and her children have gotten really close to the Terrell's kids. So I don't remember his name, but he came along with questions about that first week. It was a lot of information. I could go on for hours. And then the next day was a travel day. So we went from, I should put the map back in, but Blantyre is in the southern portion of Malawi, and then Salima's in the central portion. So we got to go to a safari. And so our safari, or a place that we stayed overnight, was within the Lawande National Park. So there were animals walking around us all night. When we went to go get fed, the monkeys were waiting, and as soon as the food was not being supervised, they'd run in, snatch it, and go away. Food was not being supervised, they'd run in, snatch it, and go away. So we learned not to do that. When we were walking around the park, the man said, oh, this one hut, that's where the lions like to come scratch and roar at night to show you that they're there. We went swimming at night, and they're like, the lions can jump over the rocks. At night, and they're like, the lions can jump over the rocks. But we did not get eaten. I did not get hurt. But so we got to stay in these little chalet lodges. And when we first got to Malawi, I didn't show a picture, but we got in the guest house, and we're like, oh, that's so nice. They have decorations over our beds. And then we're like, oh no, those are for mosquitoes, so they don't get us. So that's what a typical mosquito net. You have to like tuck it in, and there's holes in them, so they're not very effective, but I didn't get malaria. So this is a place called Kuchiri Lodge. In the morning we did a land safari. So it was like the gaming. So we took our safari little truck, which you'll see, that's the thing we took. We went through. While we were there, we saw several elephants. We saw impalas, warthog type things. So we saw impalas, warthog type things. We did not see any lions. Giraffes are getting put into the park this year, so we didn't see any of those. And then we came back, ate, and then we went on a boat safari. So in the water, we saw elephants, and we were probably maybe like 20 feet away from them. Buffalo, they were staring at us, and they were like, okay, we should probably leave now. And then also hippos, so many hippos. And so this is a mom hippo who was pregnant on she was getting some food and then coming back down. But they would go underneath the water, and then everyone would be talking. I'm like, the hippos are going to come out for like 4 minutes. So that was really cool. We were not going to originally go on the safari, but I'm glad we did. And then after the safari, we traveled that was another long trip. Maybe another like 4 hours to actually this district of Salima. So we got there, we stayed in a lodge, which is basically a hotel. We had electricity there again. It was good. And then the next day we went to the church in a more even rural congregation than the one we did in Pemba. From our hotel to this church, it was an hour drive. And it was dirt roads. And we were told after we went there that they've never taken a group there because a lot of groups that go with Kingdom Workers only help with the Jesus Cares ministry. They're only now starting to get specialized groups to attend. But so they said a lot of these people, we might have been the first white people they've ever seen in their lives. So it made a little more sense of why they were a little more interested in us than the Pemba residents. But so that's the outside. They were a little more interested in us than the Pemba residents. But so that's the outside of the church, and that's the inside. So as you can see, again, there's no electricity. The only light they have is through the crosses. The last day we were there, it was raining, so it was very dark in the church. The floors can get slippery. It's very simple, but I don't have a video of it. It's very simple, but I don't have a video of it. But every single time, so they would For the therapy day, they would do a training, and then they do a church service, and then they provide the therapy. And the people would sing out their praises to God. They'd stand up, they'd sing, they'd dance, and it like make a scene at church. We just want to kind of stay with the status quo. And these people just want to sing their praises to God, and they don't care what they look like or how they sound. But so along with like the whole thing of like them never seeing white people before, there was these village kids who found out that white girls were staying. Professors started, so like after church or like during therapy, they would all like kind of watch what we were doing in church. And then my professor, Dr. Goldbach, she's funny. She would like start chasing them, and they thought this was so funny. So like it was probably like 45 kids by the time we left of all these village, and so they were super cute. Except there was one that's like, give me your money. And we're like, no, we're not going to give. He's like, give me a football. We're like, no, we're not going to give you a football. But yeah, they were cute. So then one of the really, so this is a little girl named Shakira. So I don't know, sorry, the picture quality isn't very good, but she has a lip deformity. And I think they said she was about 7. After we did her intake, we found out that like her mom thinks she has like a mental illness of some kind in addition to the lip deformity. But while we were waiting for the physio to do his presentation, since we can't understand it because we are not very proficient in Chichewa, we would try to like entertain ourselves by trying to play with the babies. And there's lots of babies in this congregation. Well, Shakira was like 2 babies, and there's lots of babies in this congregation. Well, Shakira was like 2 rows in front of us, and she kept looking behind, and we'd wave, we'd make faces. She didn't react at all. So I'm like, I'm going to get her to laugh. And so I took out a piece of paper from my journal, and I started coloring on it, and I extended it to her. I'm like, do you want to color? After about 30 minutes, she didn't want anything of it, so I put it away. And then for about 15 minutes later, the lady next to her is like, she told me she wants to color with you. So we colored together, made pretty pictures, and then when I went to go treat clients after that, she was like right at my hip, and yeah, I have from Shitala. Then, so as I said, there's lots of people on the road, there's goats in the road, there are chickens, there are lots of goats in the road. One day we were stuck behind 100 goats, and because they like heard them and they just run, and there's one goat that does not like to move as fast as the other group. But yeah, there's one goat that does not like to move as fast as the other group. But yeah, goats everywhere. And then, so I thought this would be kind of cool. This is so like where we stayed was nothing like what the typical Malawians stay. This is a typical hut that someone would stay in. I think they said 97 basic. Some don't even have a roof like that. So it all depends on what they can afford and what they can find. Then on our second day in Shitala, we again did therapy, did our typical thing, worked with the physio, worked with long-term volunteers, heard their spiel. I'm going to show you a picture of Clement, who was a physio we worked with there. But when we dropped him off after doing therapy our second day, he's like, oh, do you want to come see where I work? And so we did. Because the physios, they're contracted out. They don't do this full-time. They don't work with Kingdom Workers full-time, I should say. So he this full-time. They don't work with Kingdom Workers full-time, I should say. So he showed us some adaptive equipment that they make. So if you don't know, adaptive equipment is very expensive. In America, something similar to that could be like upwards of $1,000. In Malawi, they don't have that money. They don't have the insurance dollars. In Malawi, they don't have that money. They don't have the insurance or the government providing those funds. So what his company has been doing is that they make custom things to support. So in Malawi, a really common diagnosis is CP. The moms, we saw moms who are 12 years old. The dads, there was a lot of abuse, so they would hurt the stomach, which would then cause a birth trauma. And in addition, moms aren't educated that if their child does not cry, that's okay. Moms would be like, oh, we didn't hear a cry until she was 6 months old. So Kingdom Workers is also hoping that they can provide that education so that less children are born with disabilities. Anyway, so he makes custom things. So there's some that help the child stand up. There's some that help support when they're sitting. So the child can still do things by themselves, and the mom doesn't have to be constantly hurting her do things by themselves, and the mom doesn't have to be constantly hurting herself, making sure the child can still do things by themselves. Then on the right, this is how they served our meals when we were in Salima. So instead of sitting on a table, at a table with forks and knives, we sat on a mat on the ground outside, and we ate the food. So that's Sema. So if you remember from when we ate Sema at Flavors, they were just little round balls. But we make them I think I have a picture on the next slide. They make them out of like this big of like a can thing, and then they just put them into these big bowls, and everyone sits around it and digs out of it. Then they also had chicken and rice and some veggies. So hard, and then it gets very hot, and they said, you have baby hands, you need to become adult hands because it's so hot. They're like, it's okay, it's not going to burn you. I'm like, it's burning me right now. Okay, now these are all the babies. Yep, I'll just show them all up. Cute. So in America, most parents, and I understand I'm probably going to be one of these parents, that I want to know who's holding my child. I want to make sure they are not sick, that they've been caught up on their vaccinations, that they have hand sanitizer on. These parents in Malawi, they're like, they see us looking at their kids, and then they just hand them, and then they go do something else. I don't know any of their names, but this one stole my, back. Okay. This one stole my heart. I don't know his name, but he is the cutest. And then this one, on the last day, someone's like, I think she's wet. I'm like, nah. Someone's like, I think she's wet. I'm like, nah, she's not wet. So I took her back, and their diapers, they don't have diapers. They're like cloths, and that's it. And she peed, and it went all over my chichenje. And the ladies behind me started giggling and told her mom, oh, you gotta take her. So she changed her, and then she gave her right back to me. Oh, you gotta take her. So she changed her, and then she gave her right back to me. Oh, but yeah, they were so cute. If I go back to Malawi, I'm gonna hold more babies. So this is us all sitting around eating the sema. So you're sitting around eating the sema. So you just dig in, share, and then these are the ladies who are making the food. So across the road, they have this whole cooking thing. They've been cooking for a couple hours, and they make lots and lots of food. So this is the pot that they make the sema in. So it's a very thorough process, and they showed us how to make it. And then, so on the way there, so as I said, it was about an hour drive for us, but it was raining that day. So it probably was an hour and a half drive. And they said, now be prepared on the last day of treatments, there's some parents who are going to walk over 4 hours one way to get therapy for their child. So as we got turned down, so we were on the main road, and then we turned to get on the dirt road, we saw one of those parents. And so we just thought she had one child. We're like, it would take her, at this point where she was, it would probably water. So we let her get on. So she didn't just have her child receiving therapy. She also had a 1-year-old with her. As we kept going, it was pouring rain. The roads were awful. We kept picking up people. By the time we got all done, we had 17 people in a car that should have only fit 8. So we had kids on our lap. I can't even imagine walking 30 minutes to receive therapy, and they're willing to do this for their kid. So it was really cool to see. The kids were all wet, but they were happy. And then this is our last day. We're doing therapy, so the middle guy, he's Clement. He's also a funny Clement. He's also a funny physiotherapist. He works in Salima, and he's very smart. He was educating us a lot about various things. So that's our whole group. Then, after we got done with therapy, we drove up to Lake Malawi. So they told us, if you go to Malawi, you need to go see Lake Malawi. So we did. So we got to spend our last day at the lake. So it's very pretty. So this is the lake. We woke up early so we can enjoy the sunset. We're like, sunrise. We're like, we know we're not going to get sun again when we get back to Wisconsin. We'll wake up early. It's very beautiful. They have mountains. We did not swim in the lake though, because there's this parasite that eats at you, and you can take medicine to get rid of the parasite, but we're like, no. They did have a pool. And then, so along with all this like chickens and goats, this place also had a lot of stray dogs, and they were lethargic, and they would just like walk in and out of the place, but they weren't owned by anyone. Again, strange. So we only stayed there a little bit, and then we drove back to, it was another like 4-hour drive back to Blantyre. Stayed there a little bit, and then we drove back to, it was another like 4-hour drive back to Blantyre, so we drove back in the afternoon. Then this is our last day in Malawi. So I didn't show you the backyard, but this is our backyard that we had while we were in the guest house. It was so green, beautiful. People, when I think of Malawi, I think dry desert. It's rainy season right now in Malawi. It's very green. And then after we packed up, said goodbye, we went to Tiamike's again, bought a few more souvenirs. And then Dan Terrell took us to a restaurant. And it's a very cute restaurant. They have like a photo wall, so we took some photos. And this is just it. Well then, okay, sorry, one more thing. In addition to like their cool craft stuff, they have a lot of woodworking. So if you want to see some, I got my parents these like serving set utensil things. But yeah, I would highly recommend, if you've never been to Africa, especially Malawi, it's not as scary as you think it would be. I got my vaccinations. I actually feel healthy. I felt healthier in Malawi than I do here. There's not many cases of coronavirus in Africa currently. But the people are so nice. Even though like they were asking us where we live, they were just very cute. So yeah, if you ever have any opportunity to go, I would go. And Kingdom Workers is a really good organization to go with because they're experts. And that's my trip to Malawi. Yeah, so, I can put this on. So we did bring bug spray, and I put it on every single day. My professor, she's like, I've never been bitten, I'm not going to wear it. I'm like, she also did not use a mosquito net at night. I had a mosquito net on. She also did not use a mosquito net at night. I had a mosquito net on. I put mosquito spray on in the morning, during the day, and at night. One person brought one that had 100% DEET. I don't know. It ruined my phone case, and I put it on my body. I'm like, if that did that to my phone case, I don't want my body. I'm like, if that did that to my phone case, I don't want to know what it did to my body. I don't know. I only got a few mosquito bites. The person I shared a bed with at the lodge, she woke up and her entire arm had mosquito bites. I was fortunate. I only had a couple less work, a lot better than they are here. Like I didn't see many. There were a lot of flies in Malawi that I saw. Like the kids receiving therapy who couldn't move, the flies would just land on them and they couldn't do anything about it. So that was kind of, but yeah, I wore mosquito. That was kind of, but yeah, I wore mosquito spray and sunscreen. The sun is very potent there. We're south of the equator there. Or they are south of the equator. Yeah. Yeah. Go travel the world.